Does your name impact your personality, or will the name that you give your baby impact their personality? I feel like this isn't quite like a yes or no question because it's more complicated than that. If it were, I would say yes, but obviously there's like a lot more layers to unpack there. So I feel like your name is just like one piece of a million different facets that play into the nurture side of nature versus nurture. And that nurture, two people with the same name could have very different experiences with that same name depending on other pieces of that puzzle. For example, growing up, my name's Morgan, and there were a lot of different Morgans in my school district and surrounding school districts, and so we had our qualifiers. For a while, I was Tall Morgan, and that was great until another one of the Morgans hit a growth spurt, and then Tall Morgan didn't really work anymore, so then I became Bug-Eyed Morgan, and I feel like my experience as Bug-Eyed Morgan was very different. One of the Morgans, they called her Pretty Morgan. That was her qualifier. I feel like her experience with that was a little different, and probably a little more positive than Bug-Eyed Morgan. Fortunately, I think I mostly grew into my eyes by the end of high school, but I do think the nature of somebody might impact it too. So you could have a very shy girl and a very outgoing girl with the same name, and they're gonna have two very different experiences with it. I feel like a shy Roxy is gonna have a different experience than like a very outgoing, bubbly Roxy. And I also think you could think about like the different naming styles. So like people who gravitate towards different naming styles probably are gravitating towards different parenting styles too. I think the parents of a son named Sparrow are likely very different in their parenting styles than the parents of a son named like Axel. And I think physical location can play a big part into like how your name is going to shape your personality too. So I talked to a reporter fairly recently, and she asked me like what makes a bad name, and I was like, I don't really think there's like a bad name. I do think there could be like a bad place and time for a name. And I brought up the example of like Nara Smith and Whimsy Lou. I said I think Whimsy Lou works wonderfully. I think they're in Utah. Are they in Utah or LA? But like in a very like influencery like area where there are a lot of people choosing more creative names, whereas like I'm in the middle of the cornfields where I live, and it's like Whimsy Lou is going to be received very differently here. And I do think there can be a wrong time for certain names too. I think often when you look at the naming data, the name Adolf was very regularly used until the 1940s, and then it just fell off. And it's like I just feel for all of those sweet little baby boys given the name Adolf before Adolf had the connotations that it did. That was really long and convoluted. This is going to go in the drafts while I reflect on what I said to make sure I got my thoughts out. But in short, I do think your name impacts your personality, but not necessarily enough that it would be so noticeable. Like if my name were anything else, I don't think I would be a completely different person, but I do think there would be like different quirks and different characteristics about me that probably would shift a little bit because my experiences with the world and the way the world interacts with me based on like very superficial things being my name would be changed like very slightly. Okay, but I hope everyone's having a good day or night, and I would love to hear your 2 cents on this if this ever gets posted.